Pick go live.
Got it. How are you, Trace?
I am so awesome. Dr. Tart, so today's conversation is going to be for you and I. We're revisiting conversations we've had over the past few years.
Yes.
These are conversations we as a community have been having for decades. Mm-hmm. So today we're talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion, but really we're talking about creating a culture, a learning culture of inclusion. That's really the secret. Okay, we're putting the secret out there up front so there's no confusion. So first, let's do our introductions. My name is Tracy Harrell. I am president of It's All Bigger Than Me Consulting. I'm also president of the National Black MBA Association Seattle chapter and president of or founder of It's All Bigger Than Me Ministry. And my purpose in life is to help each of us to live our best life. And that means different things. Today, it means how do we help those who are in a place of leadership or just some level of accountability as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization, whether you're the leader, whether you're an ally, maybe you're an entrepreneur. And this is the topic you're interested in, but you're not really sure how to make progress. Today, we're going to help you. And this is the beginning of work that we've been doing, and we invite you to join us on this journey. And with me, I have one of my favorite people, Dr. Jerry Bird-Tart. Would you please introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I am Jerry Bird-Tart. I'm a psychotherapist in Orlando, Florida, and I truly do love Tracy. I have been on this journey for decades, and I do mean decades. It has been an experience. I have been in private practice for the last 22 years. I worked in corporate America for 20 plus years. So I've been here for a minute. I see the significance of this. I've always wanted to be someone to help. It has been my desire since I was 16 to be a psychologist, rather. And as God would have it, He has provided that opportunity for me. And not only did He provide the opportunity for me to get my doctorates, but to maintain my business for, as I said before, 22 years this year. So we want to give Him all of the praise. I am so excited that we're talking about diversity and inclusion, because it is critical, I think, to the existence of our being as humans. Moreover, as it relates to our current culture, there is such a need for us to understand each other. And this is a platform, and I'm excited to participate on that platform, this platform today.
I love it. I love it. And thank you. Someone said, we always have to establish a higher level of credibility. So there's me bringing Dr. Jerry Bird-Tart helps with credibility, right? Because we know she definitely knows what she's saying. But you like how cute she looks with that gray hair? Dr. Tart,
wait a minute.
We've been doing this for a minute. We've been in this game for a minute,
yes,
right?
Yes.
What I like to say is, it doesn't matter where you are on the journey. Being in is the win. Being in is the win. Deciding you want to be a part of this journey is really what's important. So I spent 25 years in corporate America, 8 years at IBM, 14 years at Disney, and 5 years at Microsoft. And I've always been deeply engaged in the National Black MBA Association as well, the oldest, largest professional organization in the nation. And so we've done this work. I was, leadership president of the Black Employee Resource Group at Disney, the largest employer in the nation. So when I say we've been doing this work for a while, I've been doing it not as a part of what I get paid to do, but this is why I was put on this earth.
Yes.
I was put on this earth to do this work. And when you have someone talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I know inclusion, but I also know exclusion. I've been the fluorescent yellow on a team of pastels who lovingly wanted to do the right thing and didn't know how. Right. And so part of the work that I did internally and the part of the work that I'm focused on now is how do we truly change the status quo? So Dr. Tart, we're going to talk real quick. Point number one is, why is diversity, for those who really may not know, why is diversity and inclusion so important for business, right?
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that it is so important is because there is a need. There is a need for not only your business as an entrepreneur, not only for it to grow, but it is there. The need is there for others to recognize that in an effort to collaborate, we have to know about the other, whoever the other is, whether it's male, female, whether it's a gender issue, whether it's an ethnicity issue, whether it is an age issue or whatever. We need to understand those things that are really important to the other individual. What are those things? So if I place the importance on you as a younger person and the things that are critical to you, even though I'm older, my effort to at least lean in to where you are, my efforts to show you that you matter, that the issue that you have, they matter, and that will improve our relationship. It will enhance my business as a therapist. I need to know if you're coming in and you're in this particular generation and you're talking about these things, in order to keep myself alive or keep myself afloat, I need to talk about those kinds of things. But it's not just for me, it's to let you know that you matter to me, that I've gone off and done the work to try to stay in touch with you, to try to stay above board and understand your concerns. I may have walked a similar journey, or my journey may have been very different from yours, but to let you know that because your journey is important, I need to hear you, and I need to regard and respect where you're coming from, and validate the fact that that's your journey. It doesn't mean that I necessarily understand everything there is to know about you, or that I even agree with everything it is that you have to say. But its significance is to let you know that you matter to me as another human being, and I want to matter to you. So I open up to give you what I need, and I receive, and I let you know that I'm receiving what it is that you're saying.
Yes, 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 and yes. All good. And that applies to whether you're talking, and I love that you mentioned generational, because people may see two Black women and say, okay, this is a race thing. Nope. Diversity and inclusion is all about inclusion for all. That's what I like to talk about, inclusion for all, whether it is about culture or race or sexual orientation or generation, or whether your level of ableness, right? Like all of the things that make us different are important. And so when we focus on inclusion for all, then it doesn't matter what that difference is, because we're going to focus on areas of where we can connect, and to your point, Dr. Tart, where we can connect and value each other, no matter what the differences are. We're going to focus on those things that unite us, right? Not those things that divide us. And if there are individuals here that are thinking about their business, and I know a lot of small business owners, think, well, I don't, have any young people working for me. You have clients. Like the workforce is becoming, according to the research, the workforce is going to be predominantly 70%, I think, young people within a short period of time. I think in the next 30 years, right? 20 years, that the workforce will be primarily run by young people and diverse individuals. So it matters. It really does matter. Dr. Tart, don't quote me on the numbers, guys. We'll bring up some slides later. I'm making this up as I go. So we'll bring up some specifics around the numbers, but these are things that we already know. The workforce is going to be younger and it's going to be more diverse. So if you're thinking about your clients, people that you're selling to, it's important as well. Dr. Tart, we also know the business case for diversity. We started talking about this 30 years ago, and I'll just recap for people who may not be aware. The business case for diversity says that companies that are more diverse, are more creative, they're more solution oriented, et cetera. The thing that many people miss when they talked about companies that are more diverse, they say they're more profitable. The truth is, they have to get there. There's an if that comes with that. So the business case says we're supposed to bring in underrepresented voices into organizations that are mostly consisting of similar individuals, whatever that means to you and your business. So when you bring in underrepresented individuals, it's not automatic that you get the benefits of diversity. Diversity and inclusion go hand in hand together. And there's more to it. People talk about belonging and the other elements of that. We're just going to talk about, keep it simple, diversity and inclusion. When you bring diverse people into an organization, you must also create a culture, a learning culture of inclusion. That's what really today's about. We want to make sure there's no confusion. If you just go bring in somebody who's diverse, all of a sudden your company is going to reap the benefits. No, it's really about this learning culture of inclusion, which says we're going to learn and grow together. Dr. Tart, there's importance to learning and growing together. And we have four pillars we're going to talk about in a second. But what are your thoughts about getting people comfortable understanding that there's not this happens and then that happens? There's the concept of a journey. The learning culture of inclusion is really about a journey. Why is the concept of a journey so important?
I know that it's important because it isn't just the picture that you see. To your point, you can't just go out and get somebody that's different, that looks different from you, or that's a different gender, and say, okay, I'm expecting to reap the benefits because I've checked off this particular box. The inclusiveness or the inclusion is important when that individual can relate. I want to go back to that because I was stating that early on. When there's a level of that individual relating to the environment. I see that you're in this environment and you've got all of these new pieces that's moving in different directions or whatever. I am of this diversity, whatever it is, like you said before, whether it's gender, whether it's age, whether it's disabilities or whatever, I can maneuver. I can, and you as the consumer know that I can maneuver. You walk in and you see me, you see my white hair and you go, oh, that old woman doesn't know what she's talking about. But when I start using your language, when I start talking with you about the circumstances and I share with you, it is important for the journey because we're both still on this side of the ground. You understand what I'm saying? We're still alive. We're still growing. We're moving. So I want you to understand that I'm invested in that growth. I'm invested in that newness that you think you're calling it new. I've been there before, so it looks a little different. So it is new from that perspective. But the core part of that, we're talking, like you just said, we've been talking about this for decades, centuries. And where are we going? The journey is about the change. Can we change and be accommodated and be regarded, to be respected? Can we appreciate the value that the other brings? Do we know how to manage this walk together and celebrate wherever it is that we are, as much as it is that we understand things that we can pour into the significance of the inclusion. I can say I'm back in the day, and let's just go there just for a second, and as it relates to inclusion, and I'm not a fashion guru or whatever, but what I'm trying to say is that once upon a time when I was growing up, it was critical that if you were going to go to a place of status, particularly the church, and I'm from the South, then you had to have on pantyhose, you had to have on stockings. Nowadays, that is so far removed from our culture. Young people don't know what is that? They don't even know what to call it, as it were, necessarily, unless they're leggings. You understand? Something as simple, and that may seem to be so antiquated on the one hand, but it is so critical in terms of staging, for lack of another word, or for letting you know that I get where you're coming from or not, because my presentation is going to give a message. So when you're talking about inclusion, what is it that you want that individual to bring to your business, to bring to your company, your corporation? What is it that you want them to bring? How is it that you're going to extend that to them so that they would want to, that they have the desire to move in that direction and to grow with the business or the project, whatever it is? Okay.
I love that. I love that. And when you, I know you only have about, I think, again, Dr. Todd is a working therapist. She has clients in 5 minutes. So we're gonna talk about 4 pillars after you're gone. I'm gonna take people through that work and why the work that we're doing is so important and why it's successful. But what I want you to do is help us as we think about this culture of inclusion, this growth, right, that needs to happen. What the research says, and this is all Harvard-based research, again, diversity. The business case for diversity says companies are more valuable, they can be more profitable, successful, creative, if they have a learning culture of inclusion and they're willing to bring in the voices of these individuals. So what you just said was a great example, but are you willing to bring in the voices to create outcome that is different? So when I said I was a fluorescent yellow on a team of pastels, if a team of pastels only knows Monet, if you know art, right? Monet painted just pastel. So if you bring in someone who's fluorescent yellow, if you want them to contribute any of their true authentic self, then the measure of success cannot just be a Monet. He didn't have fluorescence, right? So if you think about this idea of, you like that analogy?
Yes,
you like that?
Yes.
So if we think about, so you got 5 minutes from a psychologist's perspective, what advice would you share with leaders, business owners, allies who are listening about change, about accepting others? How do they do that? And the idea of being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Tell us a little bit about what, why, and how that works.
One thing that I would like to say is get centered. And by that, I mean, we are all invested in that thing that we repeatedly do. Whatever that is, there's already an investment. So when someone else talks about change, it's going to affect us emotionally some way or the other because of the way that we understand that statement. So when there is a need, and there really is a need for not only the diversity, but just as you're saying, the inclusiveness, it's like, so you ask the question, well, what does that look like? What does that look like? And where can I put that? How can I I blend that into my existence? Because I may not be able, there could be such strong philosophies that we hold about a particular ideology that it may be very, very difficult. So it's important to understand that centerness, as it were, or introspection, a corporate introspection, if I can say that, is very critical in terms of understanding your end goal. What then does that look like? Where do you believe, what is your concept of loss? If I bring this person in, will I lose or will I gain? What does that look like? Okay, be clear, be transparent first and foremost with yourself. Then look at what it is that you say that your goal has been. Why is that particular goal the only goal? Is there something, are you willing to go back and tweak that? Are you willing to go back to even cut something out completely and insert another, as if you're grafting in a new piece of something? You know, being honest and open enough to realize that, and then recognize, what does that mean about me? Because we relate to what we do. We relate to what we considered, and we started this conversation by talking about the dream that we had to use the talents and gifts that God has poured into us. And whenever it is that we realize it, it's been a part of our journey, because it is a journey. It's not a destination, it's a journey. So we want to talk about the fact that I can shift my paradigm. I'm willing to do that, and I'm willing to do it lovingly, because we can do things, but we can do it grudgingly. Excuse me, please. And it doesn't turn out the way that we are hoping. So when we open ourselves to change and say, I'm still alive. God has still afforded me the opportunity to see this coming into fruition. What's my part? I want to be a part of this. I'm willing to pour into that. I'm willing to shift. I'm willing to make a difference in making this particular thing go forward, because that's a part of my legacy for my grandchildren or whomever. You know, it's a part of being the community that we say that we want to be, and that we want to see. And Tracy, as you know, one of my portraits that I gave you once before is be the change that you want to see. Be the change. We've got that opportunity. So it's imperative that we are in it to win it, as it were, that we are willing to do our part. You know, one person can't do the lion's share of the lifting if it is that this is going to succeed and we can have a better world. Okay.
Well, ain't that perfect? Dr. Todd, perfect timing. More to come from you. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
So welcome.
Yes.
You take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye. Okay, guys. So you heard it. Dr. Jerry Bertart. She really is one of my favorite people. And what she said is just a mirroring of some of the many, many, many conversations we've had before. But are you in it to win it? Do you want to truly drive change for yourself, for your business, within your community? If so, here's how we do it. And this is part of our most recent books. Oh, did I mention I'm an internationally best-selling author? Did I mention that I've contributed to 3 internationally best-selling books, and we have another series of 3 that are moving forward. The first book was called Ignite Happiness. The second book was called Ignite Your Inner Spirit. And the third book was called Ignite Possibilities. And what's exciting about that, we brought together voices of individuals who knew that anything is possible. And my story in that last book, Ignite Possibilities, was really around inclusion as well. Actually, all 3 of the stories were about inclusion. They were my origin stories. But you know, what we all talk about is anything is possible. It's possible when we believe, when we are willing to be intentional. I like to say, you know, the work I do is intentional and organic, right? It's intentional in that I know exactly what needs to happen. I've done decades of research. I've connected, I bring in experts who are geniuses in what they do, geniuses. But it really does matter. You have to want to go on this journey. That's why I thought it was really important to bring Dr. Jerry Burtart, onto this learning session. So again, I'm going to go through some specifics, and we'll talk about the how, and we'll go more into the what you need to do and what you need to think about and how it will impact your business as well. But again, did you hear what she said? You have to want to do it. You do. You have to want to do it, and you have to be in it to win it, which means it's a journey. You're not going to have this training and all of a sudden, your organization is diverse and inclusive and all is right with the world. No, you decide that you want to be a part of change, and you're willing to invest in a learning culture of inclusion. And let me be clear, a learning journey of inclusion to create an inclusive culture, a learning journey. So here's the journey. So what we've done over decades, what I've done is pull together some solutions, and these are all research-based. If anyone wants to email me, it's tracy@itsallbiggerthanme.com. We'll make sure that is available for you. I'll obviously make sure it's in the chat for those who are watching this. Itsallbiggerthanme.com. And we can provide you with links and research and content and numbers. We have all the data, but I didn't want this to be a normal training, because normal D&I training doesn't work. Just saying. If it worked, we wouldn't still be having the same conversations 30 years since we started this. So there was an article in the Harvard Business Review over 30 years ago, and it literally talked about the business case for diversity. And they said businesses that are more diverse, that allow their output, their culture, their practices and policies to change as they bring in underrepresented voices, as they bring them in, hear me, as they bring them in and include them. Those voices, those businesses are then more successful. They're more creative, they're more profitable. Does it take a little longer in the beginning because you're integrating the voices? Absolutely. Is the outcome extremely valuable? Proven without a doubt, 100%. The answer is yes. Yes. So what we're going to ask you to do is go on a journey. And here are the 4 principles that we use on this journey. Because as a leader, you're basically leading others. As a leader of your business, as a leader in your organization, whether you're joining this journey as an ally yourself and you're saying, I really, really, really want to be a part of change. Let me tell you what that looks like. So as a consultant, I do keynotes and workshops, but really it's about those deeper, inclusive, transformational experiences. So we create a community of individuals, and we invite you to be a part of it as well, to truly be on a journey to drive change. And I mentioned being an author because part of what we do is we videotape a lot of our sessions. I have over 1,000 interviews of individuals who tell their story and where they were when they started versus where they are at the end. It's so powerful. And people along the way, we all have best practices, things that work, but we also have things that don't work, right? And when you hear voices of other people, when you hear people that don't look like you, that don't sound like you, that are potentially from a different generation, sharing their voices and sharing their stories on a video or in a live interaction in a community that's safe, there's value in that. So you get to expand your perspective. I have a 7-phase process, and we're not going to go through it all today, but I will talk a little bit about it. So first, I'm going to ground you on the principles. I'll slow down. I'll pause. Let you take it in. Key learning, it's a journey. There's value in D&I, and that concept of you agreeing, deciding that you're going to invest in a learning culture of inclusion. You're going to invest in this journey. Invest your time and your energy, decide I'm in. And again, my special quote is, being in is the win. Yes. Okay. So we're going to talk about the 4 foundational principles that will guarantee that, basically the proof points. This is why what we do works. And I haven't even talked about all the things that we do, because I think it's important for you to understand, for you to get the value of your business. She made it very simple. We talk to people that don't look like you, right? Connecting a community, something like this, right? Where people who aren't like you are open, willing to help you learn and grow together. So here are the 4 principles. Principle number 1. When I say principle, I mean foundational principles which underlie, create the guaranteed success for why inclusion, creating that learning culture of inclusion, why it works and what you can do as well. So if you had to research 4 topics, these are our 4 pillars, and I'll tell you a little bit about them, but feel free to validate if you need more information. because I'm going pretty fast. I'm going to talk about a lot of things today. So the first thing is positive psychology. It's been proven. I think most people, these aren't complex topics either. So if you need more detail, feel free to put in the chat and I can give you some resources, et cetera, and we can talk about them in more detail. But the concept of positive psychology is critical to the work that we do. And I'm a little special, right? We're all special, we're all unique, but I embrace every authentic piece about my journey and who I am. And so positive psychology is scientifically proven to produce more long-term and immediate foundational results than any other form of conversation when you're trying to connect with people. Positive psychology is a broader discipline. There's a whole tons of information out there, but that's how we move forward in this work, positive psychology. And by that, I mean, we do agree that it's important for people to understand the idea of being uncomfortable, but I'm also a little different. Like, I don't use the term racism. Not that racism is a non-positive thing, but it's just not part of my vocabulary. I wasn't raised using the word. I love the word anti-racist for some reason, because I like the idea of saying, if you understand that racism exists, it's like the devil and God, right? Like, not that this is about religion, but if you believe that one exists, then the other must also exist, right? If you believe in God, then you might, that there's whatever. Again, this is I have fun with it. This is not about religion. I'm just saying, if you believe in one thing, you kind of have to believe in the other. So I believe that racism exists for sure. I don't talk about it. It's just not part of my language. But if I do believe that racism does exist, I don't call people racist because that's not my determination. I just don't use the language. But I love the word anti-racist because I think it proves a very significant point, right? It's about being intentional. If you know that this exists in the world, whether it's you or whoever, being anti-racist it's about being intentional. So I do like this word, but when I use the term positive psychology, no one's called racist. I don't even use the term white supremacy. Does it exist? Clearly, one would say that there's tons of evidence that would prove that there's systemic racism in America. Again, just not language that I typically use. I'm saying it now so that you know that that's not language that we use in the work that we do. But it's language that's used everywhere. But for me, it's not necessary. It's not necessary to use the language white supremacy or racism, because what we're saying is it doesn't matter where you are. I would invite the president of the Ku Klux Klan to come join us, even if he's a racist and believes white supremacy. It doesn't matter, right? The whole point is, if someone has an open mind, positive energy, wants to be a part of true change, we would invite them to join us. We don't tolerate negative energy. So clearly, if there were, rules broken, right, regarding our community, we wouldn't have someone coming in calling, being horrible to other people, because positive psychology is important. So when I say positive psychology is a foundational principle in your organization, within your space, this is what we do, but it's also what you can leverage as well. I'm not saying other people shouldn't use those words, because that'll make me, again, this is what I do. So within your space, everyone's on a different journey, right? So just so we're on the same page, I don't want anyone to write me and say, well, how dare you say those things? I'm not saying they don't exist. What I'm saying is, in the work that I do, based on where I am, deep in this work, I need to be this positive woman that creates a space for everyone to learn and grow. So that's for me. Everyone else has their own journey. That is for me. That is the experience that you're going to have in my space, in this work that we do related to equity and inclusion. As a part of my company, It's All Bigger Than Me Consulting, and It's All Bigger Than Me Ministries. Again, this is free work that I've done for decades to help our community. Now I'm actually formalizing training, consulting, keynotes, etc. And that's just how I choose to move forward. So don't write me, do your own thing. Don't tell me about racism. That's language that others use. I actually talk about equity and inclusion. I talk about when there's a lack of equity in a space, whether it's related to race or gender or whatever it is, when you can talk to someone about something being equitable, that's easy, right? So if you think about the terminology or the essence of positive psychology, it's really more about connecting with people, pulling people in, not putting up a barrier where they're like, I'm not a racist, I don't believe in that. It's like I said, it's not part of my language, so it's easy for me. I'm just explaining the difference, and again, don't anyone call me or write me about my choices. These are my choices and they work. And they're all clinically and research proven. So you all do your thing, whoever you might be, know that I am giving you the best practices that work for me and that work for hundreds and thousands of people. So I'll keep moving. So positive psychology is thing one. And I was just describing how positive psychology is created, how it is, how it manifests within the work that I do, how it manifests within conversations around workplace equity and inclusion. So when I, as a business person or as a person in general, when I talk about equity and inclusion and driving change within your organization, I actually want to invite people to be a part of the conversation. I want them to feel comfortable knowing that we're on the same journey, that we're driving toward the same work, etc. That's positive psychology. Positive psychology. Let me slow down. Positive psychology. Critical. That's how it shows up within my space. I don't use language that is overtly offensive. That's just, again, I'm a Southern girl and East Coast girl, I guess, maybe more so East Coast than Southern. I'm from Florida. I'm a Gator. My background, again, IBM, Microsoft, Disney, corporate space. So my brain just processes data differently. And so on this journey, I believe you can be extremely successful on a journey of equity and inclusion without using the term racist and white supremacy or whatever. Not that it doesn't exist, the concept should be known. This is what it means, this is what it is, but it's just not part of the work that I do. And I know that may be new to people, but I think it's important and I wanted to put it out there into the universe. Principle number 2 is this concept of adaptive leadership. I'm a bit of an expert when it comes to adaptive leadership. This is about systems change. Everything that we do is about changing the system, which means systems exist. Basically, systems, we're all a part of systems, and I can use traffic as an example of what a system is, right? Your organization is a system, right? If you're part of a business, there's systems that are at play, right? And so adaptive leadership is the concept of understanding those systems, understanding the interconnectivity with systems, but also creating a safe space for those people that want to do systems work to learn and grow together. So that's the other key pillar of the work that I do. And we can talk about adaptive leadership in more terms. When I was at Microsoft, I created something called the Adaptive Leadership Equity and Inclusion Initiative. And it was really work that was around systems change. And we used positive psychology as well. At Microsoft, they also talked a lot about growth mindset. A lot of companies, Carol Dweck wrote a book called Growth Mindset, and I've kind of amplified that. So for me, I call it growth mindset. This is pillar number 4. Actually, I'm skipping 3. 3 is self-directed learning, but I'll come back to that. So in the order that I normally say them is positive psychology, adaptive leadership, self-directed learning is number 3, and number 4 is growth mindset in action. But as I think about the work that has been done in corporate America or in businesses, Carol Dweck talks about growth mindset. Love the book. When you're around leaders who do great work and want to do great work, oftentimes, unfortunately, when you combine the word systems, which is why I'm kind of connecting the two, all these four pillars are connected. When systems are in place, systems are designed to maintain the status quo. So if systems are designed to maintain the status quo, which means the processes, the procedures, the practices, they just kind of go. People are more comfortable doing what they've been doing. Your brain is more comfortable. Your brain is programmed to actually continue to do whatever you've been doing, even if it's not good, even if you're a smoker. Right? If you're like, smoking's going to kill me, your brain's like, I need another cigarette, right? And your body too, there's other things associated. But just know that like our brains kind of, they hardwire certain behaviors if you've been doing them for an extended period of time. So if you combine this concept of adaptive leadership with this concept of growth mindset and action, right? Growth mindset with Carol Dweck, again, most people know, we can learn anything. Right? We when you encounter a challenge, you see it as an opportunity. I can do better. I can do better. You say the words, but I've created an amplified version of Carol Dweck's principles, and I call it growth mindset in action. Because oftentimes we have good people saying things, but then not taking that extra step to ensure what they say aligns with what they do. Or even more importantly, they're going to say the things. They're going to say what sounds good, Are you doing what you say? Are each and every one of your actions aligned with what you say? Are you open to allow people who love you, who are in your space, who experience you, to help you to ensure that what you say and what you do are aligned? That's really critical. It's those moment by moment instances, and that's how you change the system. So if you're in a business and someone comes in and they're speaking Spanish, and you don't necessarily invite that guest into, or they don't feel comfortable, or maybe you're not really communicating, get a Spanish English dictionary, for heaven's sakes. Go watch a video. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Something. Right? That's just a little something that allows you to say, I welcome everyone into my business. Do you? Welcoming someone, but if someone walks in and you kind of ignore them because you really can't speak to them, they're not feeling welcomed. Your actions don't align with your words. I welcome everyone. Hola is a welcoming word that you could add to your vocabulary that would help someone who walked into your company. That's a minor thing, but it's just the concept of how do you align what you say with what you do? It's not, you don't get to decide. By the way, you as the person who is running a business, leading an organization, leading a team, or just an ally who wants to truly be a part of change. The whole premise of this work is connecting in community. That's the work that I've been focused on. That's the work that's truly valuable. That's the work that's proven valuable. So positive psychology, principle number 1, adaptive leadership is really also about working in community, right? Understanding systems, but creating a safe space for good people who are on the same mission to do work and to learn and grow together with mistakes, right? Growth mindset in action, similar concept of knowing that you can drive change, that you can be a part of the difference, but making sure what you say as you embrace the growth mindset, that it is aligned with what you do. And you have to bring others in, others that don't work for you. People that are willing to tell you the truth. Did I not mention that part? Did I not mention that it's important when you're the business owner? You can't be on your soapbox, or you can't be at the top of the food chain and not having other people at the top of their food chain, which is why connecting in a community like this bigger than me community, or connecting in a community of people who want the same thing, but who don't work for you. Just FYI, over 70, I think it was like 78% of Black people, just as one example, who were surveyed, even when their bosses came to them and said, we want to have a courageous conversation. We really do want to have a courageous conversation. This is right after George Floyd. We want to hear from you. And then there's good and bad to that, right? There's good in it because you're basically saying, I want to hear from you. The challenge is research has proven, it was through the Diversity MBA magazine, 76, like some huge, almost 80%, but we'll just say 76, 78% of those Black people that were interviewed, and they interviewed every race, and they had people by age, so all the statistics are in the Diversity MBA magazine. But Black people are not comfortable truly sharing what they really think on these topics with individuals within their workspace, because they don't trust that they're not going to in some way have some repercussions or some outcome that is not going to be aligned with their career path or their career growth. That's just a fact. So if you think about that for young people and others, there's different percentages of trust. And trust is one of those other silver linings, silver threads that go through this concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. Trust is critical. So if you're having conversations with people, again, going back to those 4 pillars, positive psychology, people, there's no blame, there's no shame, there's no, name calling within the work that we do. It's not necessary to drive change. Positive psychology says we can truly drive change together in a way that research proves is more successful. So that's just what my recommendation. And again, it's not fighting someone if they say words that you don't appreciate. I'm saying I don't originate that language. I'm happy to have a conversation with people about those topics, but I don't originate those words, because that's just not how I roll, right? Positive psychology is critical in this work. When people talk about race and diversity and equity and inclusion, this does not need to be a stressful, conversation. Is it traumatic? Yes. Have I been traumatized? Absolutely. Right. That's why I'm saying positive psychology is huge. It's huge because it allows those people who have been traumatized not to have to be re-traumatized and having a conversation. So let me pause and explain what I mean by that. If you have a business and you're on a journey for diversity and inclusion, it is not okay. Let me be the one to tell you to gather up your diverse employees and say, please tell me all about your trauma and your drama. It is unacceptable. Do not do that. Do not do that. I appreciate you being on this training. I appreciate you listening to this. It is unacceptable for you to invite. You have to do it in the right way. Let me just put it that way. I want people to say, don't talk to your employees. Do not set them up for a lack of success by asking them to tell you their trauma and drama, to re-traumatize themselves for your learning pleasure, is what I'm saying. There's another way to do it. There's different ways to invite people to be a part of conversations. There's also ways for you to become part of something where you're now inviting them to be a part of something amazing. Just saying. So we'll talk more. There'll be more information on our website. It's allbiggerthanme.com as one opportunity for people to learn and grow together, right? And you not traumatizing people, asking them to tell you their story and just out of the blue to help you on your educational journey. So as a leader of leaders, as a CEO and president, as someone who knows this work, like no one, listen, I'm not gonna say no one knows this better than me, but I'm saying I was put on this earth to do this work. Every part of my DNA is meant to help you do this work and to do it successfully, to do it with others, in cooperation with others. And will there be trauma? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we absolutely. But can we enjoy this work along the way? Absolutely. Yes, we can. If you're an intellectual individual being who is committed to doing this work, we can help you to do that. And let me stitch those pieces together for you. I mentioned 4 pillars: positive psychology, adaptive leadership, self-directed learning, and this idea of growth mindset and action. Now, I didn't talk as much about self-directed learning, which is my number 3. That simply says we all have to want to learn and grow together. Like we all have to want to. Research proves that self-directed learning, like I'll just use the term like a cohort. So research proves, for example, English as a second language is research that has been done in Harvard University and other places, where before participants in an English as a second language, these are adult learners who needed English as a second language and were taking it, for example, in a community college. I think it was only 10% of them actually completed the work before they were then put into a cohort. So it all kind of comes together. Now this cohort, we all have accountability for each other. We all agree that we want to be at a certain level of education, a certain level of learning. If you're a part of this ESOL, this English as a second language training. Research proved that once those individuals were put into cohorts, into a community and a group that says we all have the same goal, we're going to be on a similar journey. You may know more English than I do, but we're all going to go on this work together. They had a 90% increase, 90% success rate in individuals completing the course. And it's really about completing the course. Now, everyone's not going to speak English at the same level because I may have had an English, we may all have different levels of engagement with English. But the fact that just by saying this, using and embracing this concept of self-directed learning, this is some of those elements that come together, right? Creating a cohort, creating a community, deciding that we're going to be on this journey together, right? So all of those elements come together and making sure that what you say is aligned with what you do. That's what this particular training is all about. Helping you to ensure that what you say you want as a business owner, as a business leader, as an ally, as whatever your role is in the universe, whatever you do, whatever you say you want, in order to get that thing, in order to achieve that task, it is about being intentional. It's also about being organic. And those are words that I use. I call this work intentional and organic. Intentional in that we know exactly what to do. We have all the research behind us. We also know that when you bring people together, things are going to be organic. We just kind of let it flow a little bit. Even this training, it probably feels a little organic to you, but it's being very intentional. It's a little storytelling. Did I mention I worked at Disney for 14 years? A bit of a storytelling, right? A little fun. Have a little fun with this. So those are the 4 principles. Those are the 4 ideals that we want you to think about, to understand, that are hugely valuable, that we want you to understand how you can move forward. Now I'll tell you a little bit more about some work that we're leading as well. A little bit. Even this training, it probably feels a little organic to you, but it's being very intentional. Storytelling. How exciting. For 14 years. A little bit of a storytelling, right? How exciting. I now hear my voice from the YouTube, I think. So those are the 4 principles. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm not sure what's happening. Hugely valuable, that we want you to understand how you can move forward. Okay, it says I'm still live on YouTube, but I'm not hearing my voice. So I'll keep talking and we'll hope for the best. Okay. So what I was trying to do is pull up something else for you. Let's see if I can do that without messing something up. We'll edit this part out, hopefully. Let's see. Oh, please. So while I'm talking, here's some information that I wanted to share with you about what we know to be true about these principles of positive psychology, self-directed learning, this idea of, I don't want to use this document right here for you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the other work that we are doing, some of the work that we're doing to truly drive change. So there's really the 4 principles, which we talked about already. We talked about positive psychology, adaptive leadership, self-directed learning, and this idea of growth mindset in action. So connecting your words with your actions and making sure there's an outside in view on that success rate. So what we've done with this work, it's called transformational leadership with heart and soul, or transformational inclusive leadership. That's the work that I'm leading. And that's how you can actually create a learning culture of change. That's what you need to do, right? And we build upon a few things. We take the scientific research and relevant studies. We bring in industry best practices. I call it ageless wisdom is one of the other things. We also, as a strategic program manager, as a consultant, this is work that has been used in organizations for decades. And I also have, again, being an author, an internationally best-selling author, and a person who does lots and lots of interviews, video interviews, I have thousands of interviews with professionals, leaders, students who tell their story about their engagement with the topic of equity and inclusion. And so those are invaluable, is all I can say. And so my goal is to deliver for you not only a roadmap for success, but just really clear principles. Are you in? Do you want this work to succeed in your organization? If so, those are the things you need to think about. Positive psychology, using language that is positive. No need to call names, no need to create negative energy. Not saying that it's learning history and some of those things in history are traumatic and horrible. It's true. Not minimizing that at all. What I'm saying, in the move forward, in the go forward position for me, and if you don't know anything about the things that happen, it's important for you to learn about those things, right? I'm inviting people in who have some knowledge about what has happened in the past, have done their work to kind of process where they are as far as their level of accountability and what they want to do to move forward. We're moving people forward in a positive way, using positive psychology. I mentioned adaptive leadership. So the work we're doing isn't about immediate, it's about immediate change, but also systemic change. Adaptive leadership is about understanding systems, your role in those systems, and how to drive systemic change in the community. The third thing is this idea of self-directed learning and growth mindset in action. And so for me, what I'm excited to say is that we are truly excited to just move this work forward. And again, thank you for your time. I'm going to give you real quick an overview of the 7 phases of inclusion. So there's 7 phases of transformational inclusive leadership. And this is really simple. And it starts with understanding let me see if I can find that here. Actually, I took it out of this document. Okay, I'll just make it up from my memory. It's make it up is probably the wrong word, but I'll just share from memory. There are 7 phases of this work. Let's see. I want to be specific. So here we go. So when I talk about exploring the 7 phases of transformational inclusive leadership, we actually start with, oh, I don't have it here either. Okay, well, hold please. I actually do want to tell you what these are. Let's just see. Okay. Well, at this point, oh, there it is. I have like these, I'm writing a book on this topic, right, about transformational leadership with heart and soul. And I've been like creating these smaller little nuggets for transformation. And the phases are really about you understanding, your current state. And again, I'm going back to the visual. Let's see where we are on the Zoom. Okay, we are still live. All right. So, so you would start with this idea of current state assessment. And this is just totally off the top of my head, current state assessment. So you're basically wanting to understand what is that current state. So the idea of transformational inclusive leadership is how we are driving change, real systemic change for businesses and for organizations. So I've already covered those 4 foundational principles, which are positive psychology, adaptive leadership, self-directed learning, and this idea of growth mindsets in action. Those are the 4 foundational principles of how do you truly take the ideals of equity and inclusion and create that learning culture of inclusion for you and your organization to truly thrive, for you to be a part of real systemic change. So those 4 principles matter, and we've talked about them in detail. And now what I wanted to take you through, and again, this is just, again, I'm a techie girl, so I spent extensive time in corporate America. So I basically integrated learnings from change management and technology integration with this idea of D&I. So this idea of, creating a systemic way to truly drive change. And this is what that journey would look like for you within your organization. So if you want to embrace a journey, there's certain things you want to do. You want to actually think about your current state. And we'll talk about what that looks like. The second phase, this is all trademark information, but it's for you and free to the universe. You really want to do your own self-analysis. So once you get information from other people, I'll just talk about kind of the first two phases, because I think they're probably the most important. The first 3, actually. With the first phase being your own current state assessment. So you're kind of opening your eyes to what's really happening around me, what's really happening in my community. So when I mentioned I have 1,000 interviews, when I mentioned that we have voices and faces and content that you can dive right into and really get into as it relates to diversity and equity in business, that's what this is truly all about, right? And so understanding the current state assessment, really hearing from other people, it'll be eye-opening. Lovingly eye-opening, right? Understanding what's really happening, that's important. So once you understand the current, do a little work, and it's an iterative process. So the first 3 phases that we talk about are iterative, because you're going to keep doing them as we talk about the next 4 phases. But for today, we're going to talk about the first 3. Current state assessment, and again, we're not traumatizing your employees by saying, tell me the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Tell me all about how you felt about it. You're not going to do that. There's a way for you to talk to people, for you to connect with people. You do want to connect with them, but you want and you need for it to be an invitation. But you also got to do some work that creates trust. Trust and safety are key elements. We haven't really talked about them, but I got to bring those topics in, because, how do you get this work done? Understand that if you're a individual who might consider yourself part of in a leadership role, we all have privilege to a certain degree. If you consider yourself privileged, as again, we all are in some degree over others. So, no shame there. But if you want to drive change, then the idea of understanding your current state, it's your community's current state. It's the state where your business is thriving. So you want to understand more about the community, which means you got to learn more from the community. You got to be talking to people that don't look like you, that don't sound like you, that don't have your same background, your same educational practices. It's really about getting outside of your current space. And so we've pulled together a community of individuals that are quite diverse, and we continue to build that community. And so understanding current state is really about getting some exposure to those voices and faces, but curated. Like we've curated a community of people that it's a safe space for you to learn and grow together. Second thing is really doing a bit of self-analysis. Once you've gotten new information from people, then you really want to pause and think about your role within that current state. And then the third phase is understanding the desired state. So what role do you want to play in creating that future state, that desired state, that optimal state? What does that look like? And then what role do you want to play? So those three phases of current state awareness, self-analysis, and this idea of desired state, that's work that needs to happen for any business owner. Once you finish the desired state, then you want to actually think about, the work that it takes for you to move from desired state to your future state. That's kind of, you want to do some designing. You want to design what work needs to happen. And there's more I could talk to you about what that looks like and how it looks. Once you do that work and you say, here's where we are, here's where we want to be, that's critical. And then you need to start developing. So these are things you would have heard about if you've done any type of transitions or transformations or change management, right? Current state awareness, self-analysis, desired state, design meaning moving from where you are to your desired state. You've done current state analysis, you've done desired state. Now you got to bridge the gap between those two, right? That now you're moving to that desired state. That's design. Then you want to develop and you want to do some work. And we have all the details laid out for you on what that looks like from a D&I perspective. And then you implement, right? And then you have to understand that there's going to be monitoring and continuous improvement. You implement, you test. Actually, you test before you implement. Testing really is saying, we know that this is about systems. You're not going to catch everything in your first assessment around what do you need to do to go from current state to your future state. You're going to do some tests, you're going to do some design and some testing, and you're going to fully develop and implement, right? Design and development are kind of linked. Then you're going to implement and monitoring are linked as well. Those phases of change. And this all is happening as you're continuing phase 1, 2, and 3 along the way, right? Is this really the desired state? You're going to see more, you're going to do more, you're going to learn more from other people along the way. So it's a very iterative process. So I'm laying it all on the table. I don't want anyone to think that this is a do one training and you're done. Congratulations. If you look back over 30 years ago at Harvard Research, when they first talked about the business case for diversity, they absolutely said it requires a learning culture of inclusion, a learning culture, right? Where you're willing to intake, you're willing to grow and change, and you're willing to bring in voices that are different than those that you're accustomed to. So that is basically the story. I'm open to any questions, anything that anyone wants to ask. We will actively work the chat during this time. So go ahead and keep putting your questions in. There's a few videos I'm going to share with you as well, which I want you to enjoy, embrace. And inclusion, again, inclusion begins with each of us. Inclusion begins with an I. So this is work that each of us need to do. So at this point, this is Tracy Harrell. I'm gonna sign off, but I'm gonna actually stay with you through the rest of this session online. I'm going to share some cool videos and some voices. I've done a lot of interviews with people who want to share a little bit of what they think about this topic. So buckle up. You're going to hear from some amazing people who also have some thoughts about D&I and why it's important and why you should do this work. That's it. This is Tracy. It's bigger than me, but remember, together, it's not bigger than us. We got this. Thanks. I have to give YouTube a little time to catch up. It's like a minute or 2 minute delay. So I won't hang up yet. But know that I am super excited about this work.